You don't need a reason. You don't need an excuse. You don't need to explain. No is a complete sentence. But somewhere along the way we forgot that. We were trained to feel guilty for protecting our time, ashamed for choosing ourselves, afraid of disappointing others, even when saying yes meant betraying what truly matters to us. The Stoics would have seen this clearly. A life without boundaries is a life without direction. When you say yes to everything, you end up committed to nothing, not even yourself. And the person who cannot say no slowly disappears. This episode is about reclaiming that lost power, the art and discipline of refusal, not as rebellion, not as rudeness, but as a sacred act of self-respect. Because each time you say no to what doesn't serve you, you make space for what does. And in that space, your real life begins. Let's explore what it truly means, in a Stoic sense, to say no with clarity, with calm, and without apology. 1. No is a full sentence. Most people struggle to say one of the shortest words in the English language, no, not because they don't understand its meaning, but because they've been taught to fear the silence that follows it, to fill the space with explanations, soft justifications, and nervous apologies. But no, when spoken with clarity and peace, is not an act of aggression. It's an act of self-respect. We live in a world that celebrates saying yes. Yes to more work. Yes to social invitations. Yes to expectations that were never yours to begin with. The more you say yes, the more likable you appear. But likability, when it's rooted in fear, becomes a prison. You become agreeable, compliant, endlessly available, and slowly invisible. The Stoics knew something we often forget. Power isn't found in constant accommodation, it's found in boundaries. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from within, from the ability to govern your own will, your own choices, your own responses. And no is one of the simplest, most direct expressions of that inner freedom. When you say no, you are declaring, my time is mine, my energy is mine, my values matter. You are not being rude, you are not being difficult, you are being honest, which, in a world of politeness and pretense, can feel radical. But the real problem isn't in others hearing your no. The real battle is internal. It's in the guilt you feel after. It's in the fear of being misunderstood. It's in the stories your mind creates. They'll be upset. They'll think I'm selfish. They'll never ask again. But pause for a moment. Ask yourself, where do those stories come from? Who taught you that protecting your peace requires an apology? Children aren't born with this guilt. They learn it. They watch adults over-explain. They see people sacrifice their time out of obligation. They inherit the idea that self-worth is linked to how much they give away. And over time, they learn to associate no with rejection. But the truth is the opposite. No is an invitation to live with clarity, to live intentionally. Consider this. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align, you are saying no to something that does. Maybe to your rest, maybe to your focus, maybe to your own priorities. You trade pieces of your life for the comfort of others. And that comfort is often temporary. Because saying yes out of guilt usually leads to quiet resentment. And resentment is the tax we pay for emotional dishonesty. The Stoic doesn't fear disapproval. He doesn't build his life around being liked. He builds it around being free. And that freedom includes the ability to say no, not with anger, not with arrogance, but with stillness. Try it. Try saying no without explanation. Feel the discomfort. Let the silence hang. you'll notice something strange. It passes. People adjust. Some respect you more, some distance themselves, but you remain intact. And that, ultimately, is what matters. You don't need to justify your no, not to strangers, not to colleagues, not to family. Your life is not a customer service hotline. You are not required to entertain every request, or attend every event, or solve every problem that lands in your inbox. You are required only to live in alignment with your values. So practice it. Say it simply. No, thank you. No, that's not for me. No, I'm not available. And then stop. Let it breathe. That pause is your power. That silence is your boundary. That moment when you say no and nothing else is when you reclaim control over your time, your energy, your direction, because the person who can say no is the person who is free. 2. Boundaries protect purpose. Imagine trying to protect a treasure without building any walls around it. No gates, no locks, no guardrails, just open access to anyone at any time. That's how most people treat their time, their energy, their purpose. And then they wonder why they feel drained, scattered, or lost. The truth is simple. Your purpose cannot survive without boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're structures that protect what matters within. They are the invisible architecture of a meaningful life. They help you guard your focus from distraction, your peace from chaos, your values from being constantly overridden by external noise. The Stoics understood this intuitively. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself daily that he did not have to attend to everything that called for his attention, that some things, though loud, were not worthy of his response. This wasn't neglect, it was wisdom. It was the disciplined act of honoring his purpose over his impulses. But in today's world, we treat boundaries like they're optional. We wear busyness like a badge of honor. We confuse being accessible with being kind. We think saying yes to everything makes us good, when in reality, it often just makes us unavailable for what's truly important. What are your boundaries protecting right now? Are they protecting your focus so you can work deeply on what matters? Are they protecting your mornings from being consumed by noise? Are they protecting your emotional energy from being drained by people who constantly take but never give? Or have you allowed your life to become an open-door policy? Purpose is fragile. It's not a wildfire that burns no matter what. It's more like a candle flame. It needs stillness, shelter, and attention to survive. And boundaries are what keep that flame alive. Without them, you'll lose your clarity. You'll chase too many directions at once. You'll end up far from where you intended, wondering how you got so exhausted without ever feeling fulfilled. Setting boundaries doesn't make you harsh. It makes you responsible. Responsible for your goals, responsible for your energy, responsible for your path. And that responsibility, when rooted in inner strength, becomes liberating. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like blocking out quiet time to think and refusing to let it be interrupted by every notification. It looks like declining that call or message at night because your rest is sacred. It looks like choosing not to engage in arguments that lead nowhere because your peace matters more than being right. It looks like saying no to extra projects that pull you away from your deeper mission, no matter how interesting they sound. Boundaries are the daily expression of long-term vision. They are your way of saying, "This is where I'm headed, and I'm not willing to sacrifice it for temporary approval." And yes, some people won't like it. Some will push back. They'll call you distant, cold or selfish. But the Stoic doesn't adjust his compass based on the crowd's opinion. He moves with purpose, not popularity. So ask yourself, if you truly honored your purpose, what would you start saying no to today? Because the space you create by setting boundaries is the space where your best work, your deepest peace, and your truest self can finally breathe. 3. People-pleasing poisons potential. There's a silent addiction most of us carry, not to substances, not to distractions, but to approval. We spend years trying to be liked, accepted, validated. We learn to read rooms, anticipate moods, and adapt ourselves in real time to avoid disappointing others. But here's the cost we rarely calculate. When you live to please others, you slowly abandon yourself. The desire to be liked can wear a noble disguise. It looks like kindness, politeness, cooperation. But often, underneath that mask is fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of conflict, fear of rejection. And when fear is behind your yes, you're not acting with virtue, you're reacting from weakness. The Stoics didn't seek to offend others, but they also didn't bend their lives into shapes that pleased the crowd. They lived by principle, not by applause. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because growth demands focus, and focus demands boundaries, and people-pleasing blurs both. Think about the emotional energy it takes to constantly perform for others, to say yes when you mean no, to smile when you feel drained, to agree when your soul says otherwise. You might avoid discomfort in the short term, but you pay for it later with resentment, fatigue, and a fractured sense of identity. When you live for others' expectations, your own potential withers in silence. You don't write the book. You don't launch the project. You don't take the risk. You stay small, polished and safe, hoping that applause will make up for the emptiness. But it never does. Living to be liked is a prison, and the worst part is, it has no visible bars. You can look successful, friendly, and put together, all while your potential is suffocating under the weight of constant compliance. So how do you break free? You begin by telling the truth, first to yourself, then to others. You acknowledge the moments when you've said yes out of guilt, when you've betrayed your values for temporary harmony, when you've stayed silent to avoid being judged. And then, gently but firmly, you stop. You start choosing what aligns over what appeases. You let some people misunderstand you. You let some moments feel uncomfortable, and you remind yourself, discomfort is the price of authenticity. The irony is this: the more you try to please everyone, the less anyone truly connects with you. Because real connection isn't built on performance. It's built on honesty. And the people who are meant to walk with you won't need you to shrink to be lovable. They'll respect your no. They'll honor your boundaries. They'll cheer for your truth, not your compliance. People-pleasing might keep the peace, but it kills your potential. And the world doesn't need a more agreeable version of you. It needs the real you, clear, focused, and unafraid to be seen. 4. Honor your energy. Your energy is not infinite. It's not a free resource. And yet we spend it as if it costs nothing, leaking it into distractions, draining it through resentment, giving it away to people who never pause to ask if we're okay. Over time, this quiet exhaustion becomes normal. You wake up tired, go through the day half present, and end your evenings wondering why everything feels heavy, even when nothing bad happened. But here's the truth: what you honor, you protect, and what you protect, you strengthen. So if your energy truly matters, not just as fuel for productivity, but as the foundation of your inner peace, then you must treat it as sacred. The Stoics believed that we are not disturbed by events, but by our judgments about them, and those judgments, those spirals of thought and emotion, consume energy faster than any task ever could. A 5-minute argument can drain more from you than an 8-hour workday. A single unresolved tension can linger in your body for weeks, tightening your chest, clouding your focus, and stealing your ability to be fully present. That's why honoring your energy isn't just about rest. It's about discernment, knowing what deserves your attention, knowing when to engage and when to release, knowing that not every battle needs a warrior, and not every invitation deserves a yes. You can't build a meaningful life if your mind is constantly agitated. You can't grow deeper if your nervous system is stuck in survival, and you definitely can't serve others if you're running on fumes. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's essential, because everything you give to the world begins with what you hold within. So ask yourself, where is your energy going lately? Are you spending hours overthinking things you can't change? Are you emotionally babysitting people who refuse to take responsibility for their lives? Are you saying yes to requests that leave you empty and irritated? Or are you living from a place of grounded presence, where your yes means yes, and your no means no, and your peace is not negotiable? You can feel the difference. When your energy is aligned, your actions become sharp, your emotions become calm, your vision clears, you stop rushing, you stop chasing, you begin to act from a place of power, not pressure. This is what the Stoics meant by strength, not brute force, but emotional clarity, the ability to stay rooted in storms, the discipline to walk away from chaos, the maturity to say, "This doesn't serve me, and I don't owe it my energy." So set limits, turn your phone off, step outside, breathe deeper, guard your mornings like gold, stop explaining your rest, choose depth over noise, choose stillness over urgency. You are not a machine, you are not a battery to be used. You are a human being, and your energy is sacred. Treat it like it is. 5. Every yes to others is a no to yourself. On the surface, it feels kind. You agree to help. You take the extra call. You show up, even when you're depleted. But over time, all these little yeses, spoken out of guilt, fear, or habit, begin to cost you. Not in dramatic explosions, but in slow erosion. You lose your mornings, your focus, your goals, your peace. And what's worse, you don't even notice it until it's gone. The truth is simple, and it's brutal. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't truly align with you, you are saying no to something that does. And that something is often your own well-being, your projects, your growth, or your stillness. It's the deep work that gets postponed, the book you never write, the body you don't take care of, the vision you quietly abandon. We often assume that saying yes is generous, but generosity without limits is self-abandonment. A Stoic doesn't give out of compulsion. He gives from alignment. He helps when it makes sense, but not at the cost of his integrity. Marcus Aurelius didn't speak of martyrdom. He spoke of duty, clarity, and self-command. There's a world of difference between helping because it's right and helping because you're afraid to disappoint. Let's make it practical. Think of your last 5 yeses. Were they honest, or were they spoken out of fear, out of habit, out of a quiet voice in your head that says, "If I don't say yes, they'll think I'm rude, lazy, ungrateful"? That voice, that's not your higher self. That's your conditioning, and it's dangerous because it turns your life into a series of obligations instead of a mission. You have to ask yourself, who are you building your life for? Because every yes becomes a brick in the foundation of your day. And enough misplaced bricks, and the whole structure starts to lean in a direction you never chose. You wake up months later, buried in things that were never really yours to carry. The Stoic understands that time is not money. It's life. It's your most sacred resource. And each yes is an investment. You don't give your money to everything that asks. Why give your hours, your energy, your mind? Saying yes should be a conscious act. It should come from clarity, from principle, from a deep place that says, this matters to me, not from guilt, not from people-pleasing, not from the fear of being misunderstood. And here's something else. Every time you say yes to something out of alignment, you're also teaching the world how to treat you. You're saying, my time is negotiable. My peace is optional. My purpose can wait. Is that really the message you want to send? So let's flip it. Let your yes be rare. Let it be powerful. Let it reflect your values, not your fear. And let your no be just as strong, spoken with calm, without apology, without shrinking. Because when you start protecting your time, your life begins to transform. You start building instead of reacting. You start moving forward instead of sideways. You stop being pulled and start being pulled towards something. And that shift, that's when your real life begins. 6. Say no early to avoid resentment. Resentment rarely announces itself at the start. It creeps in quietly, showing up as tension in your chest, as fatigue you can't explain, as small irritations that build over time. It doesn't scream, it simmers. And by the time you realize it, the damage is done. Not just in your relationships, but in your relationship with yourself. Why? Because deep down, you knew you didn't want to say yes. You felt the hesitation, the misalignment, the quiet voice saying, this doesn't feel right. But you said yes anyway. You overrode your own signal to avoid discomfort, to be polite, to keep the peace. And now you're paying for it. That's the thing about saying yes too quickly. It often leads to saying no too late. No to your own needs. No to your time. No to the peace you traded for temporary approval. Stoicism teaches us to live deliberately, not reactively. And part of that practice is learning to catch the internal dissonance early. If something feels off, that feeling is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's the mind and body trying to protect you. But when you silence that signal for the sake of being agreeable, you create inner conflict. And inner conflict always leads to outer resentment. Think of it like this. Every time you agree to something that doesn't align with you, you create a silent contract with yourself and with the other person. But it's a contract built on dishonesty, on suppression. And over time, that dishonesty turns into distance. You show up, but not fully. You give, but with tension. You smile, but it's hollow. And eventually, the other person feels it too, even if they can't name it. This is why learning to say no early is a gift. It protects the integrity of your relationships, it protects your energy, and most importantly, it protects your self-respect. Because every honest no is an act of alignment. It says, I know what I need, and I'm willing to honor it, even if it disappoints you. That takes courage. Especially if you were raised to believe that no is selfish, rude, or confrontational. But in truth, no is clarity, it's care. It's the act of refusing to set yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. And here's the paradox. When you get better at saying no, your yes becomes more powerful, because now it comes from truth, not pressure, from purpose, not fear, from alignment, not guilt. Start small. Practice with safe people. Say, "I can't take that on right now," or "That's not something I'm available for." Let it feel uncomfortable. Let it stretch you, but let it be real, because fake harmony always leads to real resentment. But real honesty, that's what builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. So protect your time, protect your peace, and don't wait until your body is tired, your heart is bitter, and your mind is scattered. Say no early, say it clearly, say it with love, because your peace tomorrow depends on the boundaries you set today. 7. Peace requires limits. Peace isn't something you stumble upon. It's not handed to you, gifted by luck, or found in the absence of noise. Real peace, deep, lasting, soul-level peace, is built, brick by brick, choice by choice, boundary by boundary. And that's where most people misunderstand it. They think peace is passive, that it means letting things go, saying yes more often, avoiding conflict, being the calm one no matter what. But that's not peace. That's suppression. And suppressed emotions don't dissolve. They ferment. A peaceful life is not an open field where anything can walk in. It's a cultivated garden, fenced, tended, and intentional. And that fence, that's your boundaries. Without them, your garden becomes a freeway. Anyone can walk in, dump their emotional baggage, rearrange your priorities, and leave footprints on your peace. The Stoics knew this. They spoke not of pleasing everyone, but of ruling yourself. They didn't seek to control the world. They focused on mastering their own inner landscape. And one of the key tools in that mastery was limit setting. When you say no to what drains you, you are saying yes to presence. When you decline chaos, you are inviting clarity. And when you enforce your boundaries, you're not pushing people away. You're preserving the space where you can show up fully. Here's the hard truth. Not everyone will respect your limits. Some will test them. Some will take offense. Some will call you cold, selfish, or distant. That's okay. Let them. Because your job isn't to be understood by everyone, it's to be true to yourself. And truth, when lived unapologetically, attracts what is aligned and repels what isn't. Think about your most peaceful moments. Were they filled with people pulling at you, asking for more, distracting your focus, or clouding your clarity? Or were they quiet, intentional, structured by choice? Peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of boundaries that protect your focus through the problems. It's the ability to say, "This is mine, that is not. I can help here, I must step away there." And that kind of clarity doesn't make you hard, it makes you wise. So if you want a peaceful life, stop asking how to get rid of stress, and start asking where your limits have become too porous, where you're leaking time, where you're being pulled into fights that aren't yours, conversations that exhaust you, or expectations that don't align with your values. You don't need to build walls around your heart, just doors with locks, and the wisdom to know who to let in and when, because peace isn't a prize you find, it's a discipline you create. 8. Train the muscle of refusal. Saying no isn't something that just happens naturally. For many of us it feels foreign, like going against the grain of everything we were taught. We're raised to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. But in reality, always saying yes creates a quiet war inside ourselves. That's why refusal is not just a boundary, it's a muscle. And like any muscle, if you don't use it, it weakens, atrophies, fades, and before long, you forget how to stand up for yourself. You start bending in every direction, trying to meet expectations that aren't yours. You become agreeable to the point of invisibility. The Stoics never saw virtue in self-erasure. They believed in reasoned action, in choosing wisely, and that includes choosing when to decline, not impulsively, not out of bitterness, but with purpose. Refusal is not rebellion, it's direction, and when you train yourself to say no clearly, early, and without apology, you begin to steer your life with intention. The challenge is, every yes feels easier in the moment. There's no discomfort, no pushback, no potential for guilt. But what's easy now often becomes hard later, and what's hard now, like saying no with conviction, becomes freedom later. So how do you train this muscle? You start small. You say no when it's low stakes. You practice in your language. I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. Thanks for thinking of me, but I'll pass. And then you sit with the silence that follows, the discomfort, the temptation to fill the gap with explanation, but you resist. You let your no breathe. You let it stand strong, uncluttered. And slowly it gets easier. You stop over-explaining. You stop needing others to agree with your decision. You stop trading truth for harmony. And you begin to realize people respect clarity more than appeasement. Every time you say no to something unaligned, you're also saying yes to your focus, your health, your rest, your vision. Every refusal is a statement. I know what I'm building. I know what matters, and I won't trade it for comfort. It's not about being difficult. It's about being devoted to what's true, to what's essential. So train it, flex it, strengthen it. The muscle of refusal is what holds the structure of your life upright. Without it, you collapse under the weight of everyone else's expectations. With it, you rise, steady, focused, free. 9. No creates room for what matters. Every time you say no, you're not just closing a door, you're opening space. Space for clarity, space for depth, space for what actually aligns with who you are and where you're headed. And in a world obsessed with doing more, adding more, accepting more, space is rare, sacred, revolutionary. Most people live overcommitted. Their schedules are full, their minds even fuller. They agree to things they don't care about, show up where they don't belong, and give energy they don't have. Then they wonder why they're exhausted, scattered, or uninspired. But it's not a mystery. When your life is crowded with the unessential, the essential can't breathe. That's where no comes in. It's not just a boundary, it's a tool of refinement. It carves away the noise, it clears the ground so your real priorities can take root. And that's not selfishness, that's discipline. The Stoics knew that a meaningful life isn't built by accident. It's designed with intention. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." But doing what you have to do requires knowing what not to do, and having the courage to cut it. Every yes you give drains a bit of your time, your focus, your energy. And when you give those yeses unconsciously, you're leaking resources that were meant for something greater, something that matters. And here's the real danger. The things that matter most often speak softly. They don't demand your attention. They wait for it. But if your life is too loud, you'll never hear them. This is why no is so powerful, because it creates stillness, space, breathing room. And in that space, your values can emerge. Your vision becomes clearer. Your energy flows in the right direction. not scattered across dozens of obligations, but concentrated like light through a lens. So ask yourself, what's crowding your life right now? What have you said yes to that's no longer aligned? What projects, people, or roles are you carrying out of habit, fear, or guilt? Because the truth is, what you tolerate becomes your reality. And if you want a better reality, one rooted in peace, purpose, and power, it starts with this one quiet decision. I won't carry what isn't mine anymore. Say no. Not because you're cruel, but because you care. Not to push people away, but to make room for what pulls you forward. Not as rejection, but as redirection toward what truly matters. Because in the end, a life built on yes is reactive. But a life built on selective, intentional no's, that's a life of design. And that life, that's where peace, progress, and purpose finally begin to meet. 10.No creates room for what matters. True control isn't about mastering the world. It's not about having the final word, or bending others to your will, or managing every outcome down to the smallest detail. That's illusion, exhaustion, a chase that never ends. Because the world and people don't exist to obey your plans. But there is a kind of control that's real, quiet, unshakable. It begins not with what's outside you, but what's within. Your habits, your mindset, your emotions, your actions. And it all starts with one thing: self-control. The Stoics didn't seek power over others. They didn't waste energy on external drama. Instead, they turned inward. They trained the mind the way an athlete trains the body, not once, but every day. And in doing so, they discovered something profound, that the ability to govern yourself is the only real freedom there is. Think about it. What good is influence if your emotions control you? What use is success if you crumble under pressure? What value is freedom if you're a prisoner of your impulses? Self-control is not coldness. It's not emotional repression. It's not pretending nothing affects you. It's the opposite. It's awareness, precision, the ability to feel without being ruled by feeling, to act with intention instead of reaction, to walk into a storm with clarity instead of chaos. And it's built slowly, in daily moments that seem small, when you choose to listen instead of lash out, when you pause before replying, when you resist the need to explain yourself, when you say no to instant gratification and yes to the long game. Self-control is how you show up when no one is watching. It's how you carry yourself when everything around you feels unstable. It's the difference between chasing peace and embodying it. In the end, the world will always try to pull you into drama, into distraction, into urgency, but you don't have to follow. You can stay rooted, anchored, not by controlling them, but by mastering you. So if you want to lead, begin with restraint. If you want clarity, train your reactions. If you want strength, build it through discipline. Because every time you govern yourself, you're writing the kind of life others can't shake. And that's the essence of Stoicism. You don't chase control, you become it. We often imagine control as something external, something to be conquered, fixed, tamed. But the Stoic path turns that illusion inside out. It reminds us that the world is wild, unpredictable, ever-changing, and often indifferent to our desires. But within that chaos, there is one place where certainty can live: the self. Not the self shaped by emotion, by the loudest voice in the room, or by what happened yesterday, but the self that observes, chooses, and acts from a place of clarity. You see, life doesn't reward those who try to control everything. It rewards those who control themselves through everything. the ones who don't flinch when plans fall apart, the ones who say no when their soul says no, even if their voice shakes, the ones who, no matter how loud the world becomes, return to that quiet space within again and again. Because control isn't dominance, it's discipline. It's the courage to not react to every trigger, the strength to build habits that honor your future, not just your comfort, the wisdom to know that peace isn't given, it's protected. Every no you practice, every pause before a reaction, every day you choose order over chaos, simplicity over distraction, purpose over pressure, you're not just exercising willpower, you're forging identity. And that identity becomes your armor, not against life, but through it. So walk gently but firmly, live slowly but intentionally. Don't be seduced by what you can't control. Be devoted to what you can, because when your energy is no longer scattered, trying to fix what was never yours to fix, you'll begin to see everything you needed was within you all along. You don't need more noise. You need clarity. You don't need more control. You need to master the self. And in that mastery, you'll find what most people search a lifetime for: peace, purpose, and the quiet power to live unshaken.